next we have the amazing Bobo Leennox. Now, I know, Bobo, you've got a bit of a fan club here today, haven't you? There's quite a few people here to support you, which is absolutely wonderful community spirit going on. Bobo, he's an artist, he's an advocate for social change, and he's from Cameroon, right? Bobo's story is absolutely heart-wrenching and very different to what we're used to in the Western world. His broken barrier is far greater than maybe you and I can even imagine. Bobo, over to you.
Hi, Avnie. Thank you very much. And thank you for giving me this opportunity to tell my story. And it's because of my intuition that I'm here today. So I want to thank all of you. So I grew from a community where art has not really been something that they appreciate. So it is because of my intuition that I had to move from where I was. So in the mid-80s, growing up in a community where art and creativity weren't appreciated nor promoted, I had to go through hurdles to look beyond the barriers and get to where I am today. And as a kid, at the age of 10, I already had that intuition of becoming an artist and a creative person. So following the ability and love for drawing, painting, and dance, it was like being controlled by a remote from inside. I would draw for my peers in exchange for gifts and a few coins, who showed their appreciation and attracted the attention of a teacher. This, however, propelled me into the school dance group where I specialized in creating traditional choreography, and we went on to represent the school in different school events. Back home in the community, it wasn't a welcome idea, you know. So back then, our parents understood that they sent us to school to become doctors, lawyers, engineers, pilots, etc. So becoming an artist wasn't welcome or valued then. So when information from school started reaching my community that I spent most of my time drawing and painting and dancing, I knew I was in for a very long ride because I had been passively warned and bullied by some senior people. So some parents had to call the attention of my dad from the information my mates carried back home. The few friends who loved my works and had to exchange with their extra pens and pencils, shared my drawings at home and explained how they managed to acquire one. So they didn't know they were innocently making things difficult for me. So I had to explain to them most often how I go to the cinema to sweep the hall. Since I could not afford the entry fee, I would go as early as 2 hours before the movies will be projected, and I will have to sweep and clean the hall in return to gain free access. So therefore, watching the Chinese Kung Fu films, which I would realistically put on paper. So on a sad Saturday morning, I had left home for my business, and a convoy of parents stormed our residence to have a chat with my dad. I wasn't home anywhere, so it wasn't my business, though. Little did I know I was the topic of discussion. They had narrated all they knew about my activities. The sad reality back then was that our parents, they had a negative impression of artists and creative people. So during that time, we had about 4 renowned artists in the community. They were looked upon as the least respected persons in the society who had nothing to offer and were usually stigmatized to be highly spiritual, mentally unstable, or criminals. These attitudes were due to maybe the way they dress, often in the slim fit jean trousers, ankle boots, and t-shirts. And I spent most of my time with some of these artists when I left school. I remember one time somebody asked, "Hey, Bobo, are you an artist?" And I said, yes. And he responded, "So why aren't you wearing dreadlocks?" And I told him, I am that crazy bald-head artist who has come to change the narrative. And when my father sent for me, one of my siblings had to come and call for me and ran back home, told my father I was on my way coming. It did not just end there. He had to inform my dad that I was with an artist in his workshop. So arriving home, little did I know I was going for a crusade. As I entered the house, I saw a congregation of parents who had assembled as if it was a summit. When my father told me I should move around, a parent interjected and said, I saw him cleaning in the cinema, and another parent who corroborated the story said he saw me dancing on the street. When my father told me that I should move around, that is when I knew I was at the end of the road. I was severely punished to dissuade me and to pass a clear message to others who were thought of following my footsteps. They would be chastised. I was so traumatized and shaken, but not broken. That was the intuition that I already had. So my siblings saw what happened and felt the shock. They had empathy for me. So they took most of my drawings and paintings and secured them somewhere. My paintings then were now contraband at home, and my activities were clandestine. The reprimanding didn't kill the desire for me to draw or to paint, but I was in a state of confusion for either disrespecting my parents or listening to my intuition. So I secretly continued my activities until my dad was retired from the public service and he had to move to the village. So I decided to stay back to finish what I had started. And in the year 2000, I started engaging with children and young people who showed interest in drawing and painting. One thing I realized then was that there were so many talented kids whose dream had been shattered because of the zeal to become an artist didn't go down well with the community. So for 3 years, I was struggling. Then I realized the following. In my community, then people showed little interest in works of art. The few who could admire or buy works of art were tourists, and they did so on rare occasions. So artists were left to themselves. Neither the population nor the government encouraged the sector. What they did was just to issue authorization, and that wasn't enough. So to put up an event, you must pay for an authorization, and if you want any government official to be part of the event, you must provide money for his or her fuel. So those were the difficulties we were facing. There were no spaces, no platforms where artists and creatives could showcase and exhibit their art. The 3 lone cinema halls we had back then in the city were closed down and transformed into a church, a warehouse, and a bar. So the lone cultural center we had down was replaced by a library for the council. So people who had crafts and artifacts of the region were transformed. The crafts and artifacts that we had in the region were transferred to the National Museum, and we were like a people with no culture. There were no subvention for artists. We were struggling on our own. And no inclusion of arts and crafts in school curriculum for our primary school. So in a metropolitan town of over 573,000 people, you could not find one art shop where you could buy a brush, not to mention an acrylic or an oil paint. So we had to improvise by mixing beetroot, corn flour, Arabic gum, and corn flour to make our own paint. Till this moment I speak, we have a population of over 2 million. We still don't have one art shop where you can buy a brush. The children, they are craving for leftover paints and used brushes to try to work on what they conceive. It is very difficult. These are some of the barriers that discouraged and killed a lot of creative minds. Even they became artists, they could not make it because artists were often stigmatized and alienated. And I sat and I said to myself, we cannot keep hoping and waiting. After I had the experience, I would not want to see aspiring artists and young people to face the same challenges I had. So I said, I must look beyond the barrier and break it for social change. In 2003, I created a non-for-profit art center called the Community Youth Art Center with the acronym COYAC. The objective was to promote art and culture, build community through it, empowering children and youth through sustainable socio-economic and cultural development. With nothing to show, I had to change the narrative and show the contribution and importance of artists in our society. It was a free space to empower young people, the vulnerable, the rejected, the school dropouts, and any child and youth, male or female, who had an interest in art and has the creative mind. COYAC is a space where if you are traumatized or you want to have something doing, you are welcome. The beginning was tough, but there was no source of income because people could not buy paintings and there were no subventions or funding. So I had to think out of the box. So that's when I ventured into graphic arts to sustain the Community Youth Art Center. Then I created a small graphic shop called Bobo Leennox Arts and Design. And with just a computer, a laptop, and some serigraphic printing tools, we started printing t-shirts and proceeds were used in running the center. With the little we make, Bobo Leennox Arts and Design has been the lone funder of the activities of the Community Youth Arts Center. We have empowered over 20 young men and women who are established visual and graphic artists scattered within the national territory, USA and Dubai. We are not stopping anytime soon. We still have a long way to go, and there are a lot of hungry, talented children and youth, creative minds, potential exceptional practitioners waiting for us, and we will continue with the little we have to make this modest contribution to society and bring that social change we need. The United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs in Cameroon stated in its report, number 39 of January 31st, 2022, that more than 3,200 schools remain non-functional in the northwest and southwest region of Cameroon because of the ongoing crisis. We ask ourselves these questions. What is the future of these children who are supposed to be in school? What are the contributions we are making to give hope to this generation? This is our driving force. Thank you. I would like to call Radan to run a few videos so that you people see the activities we carry out despite the security situation in our community. I think Rajan, if you run me a few videos of our activities with the children and the security situation.
Yeah, just give me a second. I'll share screen and I'll show you.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, don't. Jesus. Again.
So this is when we were preparing a project for the children, and the day before we had the exchange of guns between the state forces and the non-armed forces. So they were shooting while we were preparing to organize an event for the children.
Right. My goodness. Let me see. They just start shooting this one as well. Go transfer money for them. They just run enter for Vatican. That should be there for. No, the police it didn't make control there. So after Vatican shop now, that place go. I just see how they run the everybody already start being shoot.
So luckily enough, we had already evacuated the children. waiting for the situation to calm down before we continue with the preparation of our project. Rajan, can you run the next video so that we could take some questions? So despite the difficulties, we've not yet stopped. We are still forging ahead to make our voices heard by empowering these young kids in the community.
Oh, he's a man up there.
This girl is from Bafut. She's in the US. Yes. Yes, this is Bobona. He's the one making an expose now.
So those are some of the children. We are training them in crafts, painting and drawing, and we are having an upcoming project, a 3 days project this summer holiday to continue working with the children. So the upcoming project we'll be training them how to make clay pots, how to draw and paint, and there will be a humanitarian arts service where we'll be sending them to offer gifts in the hospitals.
Amazing. Bobo, that was, I mean, I'm looking at the chat and you've really touched, moved and inspired so many people through your words. And even when you were sharing, I was just looking at you and your eyes, and so much passion and so much dedication came through with that. And a lot of this I hadn't heard myself. And oh my God, and those videos, wow. And especially the ones with the gunshots in the background when you've just evacuated all the children. These are all barriers that we can't even, these don't even come into our radar. And these are things that, this is something that happens to you very often. And it's absolutely heart-wrenching. Like all these comments, wow, this is so inspiring, so touching. Thank you to all. Oh my God, like people are just really inspired by your story. Leennox, I mean, gosh, Bobo, thank you very much. You've really shown a different perspective today, and the dedication and commitment you have shown, it's just on another level. So thank you. There are some questions. If anybody else has got questions, please can you put them in the chat? And we've got a little time right now, so we can ask the questions. I've got some questions here as well that people sent me before. So approximately, Bobo, how many children and youth do you look after, and also how many youth and, how many people are working with you?
Yes, we have a team of dedicated volunteers, friends from the community who have dedicated themselves to run the activities of Community Youth Art Center. We have about 8 volunteers, and we are working with over 100 children. The last event we had, from the video you just watched, we had to put together 50 of those children because we could not get the resources to have more of them. If we have the resources, we can acquire 100, 200, so that we pass that message and try to inspire them. So we are working relatively with so many, irrespective of age, irrespective of sex. If you are a kid, you are a young child who is inspired, who wants to do something, Community Youth Art Center is always open for you to come. Then we begin to inspire you in the different forms of art.
So that kind of feeds into my next question. How do you get your funding? Like, how can people support you? Like you said, there was no art school near you. There was nowhere to even get art material. How can anybody support you?
Yes, for the past 19 years, there's a small graphic shop that I run that has been funding the center, and we are open for people to collaborate, to fund us, being it materially, financially. They can donate art materials. They can look for ways we run an art shop where artists and the children, they can easily get materials, and they can create GoFundMe or crowdfunding to see how to sustain the project, so that we'll have to realize the objectives that we have.
Okay, so we will leave your contact details at the bottom, Bobo. If anybody wishes to get in touch with Bobo or would like more information of how they could be involved or support in any way, that would be absolutely phenomenal. We really need to get your story out there. We need to get more people supporting, because there's a lot of work still to be done. There's one question that I've got actually. So when you do have those shootings going on, and how do you manage the children? Like you said, you evacuated them during that video, but how do you look after their well-being and their security to keep them safe?
It's a kind of situation, in the community where we are, those who are still in this community are those who don't have relatives to run to out of the town. So those of us who cannot go out and who cannot allow the children, we have to save. When there are gunshots, we have to look for safety. Either we run and hide somewhere. When the gunshots, the escalations are over, we have to come back to continue with our activities. That's the only thing we are able to do.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Well, Bobo, thank you so much from absolutely everyone here today. You have really, really touched us, and the difference you're making on a daily basis and what you've been through and to what you've become today is absolutely phenomenal. This world definitely needs more people just like you. So thank you. And for everyone that's here today supporting him, thank you very, very much.